So I thought I would take a little time to try and bust one of the myths that the right wing seems to have. In particular, something you said that I object to. You said that liberals want government to solve all our problems. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. And I think, at the risk of speaking for all liberals, I think liberals think that there are certain classes of problems that the government can solve, and others that the government is probably not in a very good position to solve. I think that the private sector solves some problems very, very well. I think housing, for example, the fact that people own their own houses is a good thing. They have the responsibility. If they don't take care of it, they're responsible for the cost, right? For maintenance and a bunch of things like that. With the ownership comes the responsibility. They're very tightly coupled, and I think it's a very good concept, and it works very well in a lot of cases. Houses, cars, clothing, food, a lot of things just work much better when people have an interest in maintaining their own property, all right? So I'm not against private property, and I don't think the government should step in and try and fix private property. A lot of times there's a market solution. There's, most of the time there's some other way of doing it other than getting the government involved. On the other hand, there is public property, which there is no incentive for any private industry to try and invest in public property. They might as well just give it away, all right? The idea that we're going to rely on the free markets to protect public property is ludicrous. There is no profit in it. There is no way a private corporation is going to invest in public property. It's not going to work. They just can't. So the question is, are there problems that need to be solved that the private sector cannot solve, will not solve, because they've got no incentive, no profit in it? Of course there are. What's public property? First of all, it's kind of a difficult term. There's physical public property, but there are other types of public property too. The most obvious public property is, the physical manifestation of public property. That would be the planet, the environment, the air, the water, the trees, the landscaping. It's just there's public property that no one owns, but it's up to us to maintain it. It's up to us to keep it from getting polluted with trash. Now, private industry has got absolutely no problem taking their trash and pushing it off onto public property as much as possible. They want to disown it. So the public property becomes this big waste receptacle for all the stuff that the corporations want to disown, all right? All the private interests want to disown. Someone has to maintain public property. Now, the private sector is not going to do it. Somebody has to do it, all right? What are the risks if we don't do it? Well, our environment is pretty important for our survival. It's our habitat. If we lose it, we don't stand much of a chance, okay? All this private enterprise in the market becomes kind of a moot issue if we don't have enough air to breathe, all right? Sorry. Other examples of public property would be security. Maybe you don't think of security as something that's public property because it's not really tangible. It's not something you can feel or touch or grab or point to. But security is the ability to walk down the street without getting mugged or robbed. It's the ability to put your paycheck in a bank and be able to take the money out later, okay? It's security. There's security. It's the security from having foreign invasions and tanks rolling through your town and raping women and killing children, okay? It's security, all right? That is security. It's public property. Either our neighborhoods are secure, or our country is secure, or it's not. We all share the same fate as far as that's concerned. Another example of public property, and one that's been under a lot of attention, under the spotlight, I guess you could say, recently, is the economy. The economy is public property too. We all share in the economy. We all bear the consequences of the economy. We all share the same sort of feelings towards the economy too, and to a very large extent. Right now there's a lot of fear over unemployment, and it's shaping the economy in a very undesirable way. Okay, but the economy is something that no individual controls or owns. No one person can fix, and because of the way that the market participants tend to synchronize, because they're very sympathetic when there's sort of an emotional contagion, if you will, where if there's a lot of fear in the market, the fear spreads and everyone acts fearful, and the market becomes sort of a bear market, and that's the kind of recession we've been having lately, you know. So there's this consequence that results on account of the fact that even though we act as individuals, we don't act chaotically or statistically. We tend to act in a more synchronized fashion. We all save at the same time. We all spend at the same time. We all have fear or envy or greed. All these different sorts of behavioral emotions within the economy tend to synchronize amongst all the participants. All right, so that is public property that no individual can fix. All right. I guess to summarize, while the private sector certainly does solve a lot of problems, and it does it very well, there are certain problems it absolutely cannot fix. And all you have to do to sort of acknowledge this is to acknowledge that no matter what we do, we're always going to have public property, and that this public property is valuable. And once you've decided those two things, the question is, who is going to take care of it? And it's not the private sector. Who does that leave? Who else is left behind to fix the problems with the public sector? And thus far, the only one who's been able to answer that call has been the government. So I'd be willing to entertain other ways of approaching the problem, but so far it's been the government, and that seems like it's going to stay that way for some time. All right. So the volunteer organizations just can't cut it. They just aren't powerful enough. All right. They just don't work. The charities, they're too small scale. All these other private organizations, they just don't put a big enough dent in the problem. All right. So all these other techniques, you say, well, we could do this, we could do that, but history shows and the evidence proves that they don't put a big enough dent in the problem to make much of an impact. All right. So, anyways, that's we don't expect government to solve all the problems, but we do expect them to solve some of the problems, specifically problems with public property. All right. So that's it. Thank you.